Thanks for tuning in to Off the Wall. I'm your host, Joshua Wall, and joining me on today's show is Jason Cherry Home Inspections. Jason, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
So, first things first, who's Jason?
Oh, geez, who is Jason? I'm a small town village boy. Grew up in a tiny little village up near Owen Sound, about a half hour southeast of there. One brother who beat me up all the time, but we're best of friends now. My parents still live in the house that we moved to when I was a baby. And so, yeah, it's fun to keep going up there and seeing my childhood home get smaller as I get bigger. I moved to London to go to London, Ontario, to go to college for architecture. Moved to Toronto for my first job at a home insurance company. I spent about 15 years appraising homes across Canada in the insurance world. Moved back to Ontario, kept inspecting and appraising houses. And in the meantime, I found myself a wife, or she found me. We have 2 kids, and subsequently have had a whole mess of dogs and cats along the way.
So you went to school for architecture.
I did. I have a diploma in architectural technology from Fanshawe College.
I definitely want to hear more about that. So how long is that program?
It was 6 semesters, but it was 4 years because it was a co-op program. So I had the opportunity to work at a few really cool places. I worked at a website. I worked in the facilities management department at the college. So there's actually projects that I designed and implemented that are still at the college. They gave me a lot of leeway as a student. And I actually ran the drafting computer labs for a semester as a co-op. So it was, I spent so much time at the college, both working, and so I got my tuition money back in the form of paychecks. So that was great. But,
Personally, I've always been a fan of architecture. I love, going into a city I don't know. Stephanie and I will just go for a walk and just walk through like historic neighborhoods and just, kind of take our time and just admire the different styles of construction and the different, custom builds or themes that are in neighborhoods and such. What's going through your head? So, you graduate high school, you've got to figure out what you're going to school for. Why architecture?
I'm not exactly sure what drew me to it. When I was in high school, I took some drafting courses, and I ended up, that's all I wanted to take in high school. So I was taking as many as I could. And here's a secret. I'm a high school dropout because I found myself at the end of grade 12, I had shifted my courses enough to take double drafting courses. I had neglected to take a senior social science. So I left school with the intention of doing correspondence courses just to pick the last one up. And I didn't end up doing that. So I was a high school dropout with 31 credits. And then around the age of 20, after working a million different jobs from factories, actually my first real job was driving a Dickie-Dee bicycle around Owen Sound, if you're familiar with those. But I had a million jobs. I went to college when I was 20, but I just always found the controlled creativity of architectural design really interesting. And I'm a details guy, so I really like the nitty gritty of how you can put things together. It's great to have architectural theory and know all the different periods and proportions, but if you design something that can't be built, then it's just a really nice drawing. So that's where I was really drawn to it. Was I would spend hours on a tiny little detail drawing, like as in on a set of architectural plans, you have details of the different areas. I'd spend hours figuring out how to make something complex come together.
Let's talk about the transition then from going to school for architecture. How did you transition from finishing school to what you went into next?
Leaving college, I had intended to go work for a large project management company like PCL or LS Don, just because I really liked project management. I did it in college as a co-op, and I loved multiple projects, and they're just, each one had a progression, and you just sort of just kept pushing them along. However, the rate of pay for the role that I'd be aiming for wasn't nearly as high as the insurance company that insisted I come and interview with them. And I had no intention of working for insurance companies. I had no knowledge of it, but they needed people with specialized sets of knowledge and interpersonal skills to be able to go into the homes of clients. And this is high net worth. So these are multi-million-dollar homes, people with a very particular, they're just particular often. And so you're going into their home to evaluate. And so anyway, the insurance company asked me to come and interview, and I found it very compelling. They gave me a car and a computer and sent me on my way. And so that's how I ended up in the insurance world. So I moved to Toronto. I spent a couple of years in Toronto, running around all over Ontario, really from there. They asked me if I would head up our office in Calgary because they were losing their senior appraiser out there. So I said, yeah. So my girlfriend at the time, who is now my lovely wife, Andrea, we moved out to Calgary. We spent about 2.5 years out there and then came back to Ontario. But because of that job, I saw thousands of amazing, incredible houses, some really strange houses in some very different areas from Montreal to Vancouver. I spent a lot of time in Winnipeg, Edmonton. I lived in Calgary. I was in the mountains all the time, driving around looking at these beautiful mountain homes in Banff and Canmore and Invermere and Golden. It was really a fantastic experience. The issue with it was very specialized, and it took me further afield from the core discipline of architectural design and drafting and technology and construction. So it's one of those things that most of my colleagues who had the similar path as me, they all started having this issue where, you know, there's nowhere really to go unless you take a bunch of insurance courses and expand inside of that industry. I was doing that for a little while. Meanwhile, my wife had been pestering me, and this is after we moved back to Ontario, pestering me for years to become a home inspector. Start a company, you can do it. You're so good at this stuff. And you know, like everybody we've taken a lot of calculated risks in our mutual lives, but I'm very risk averse, having been in the insurance world. I'm always nervous about, you know, I hope for the best, but plan for the worst. And if you can't handle the worst, take your time. But she eventually wore me down, and I was getting frustrated in my old role. So I decided to hang out a shingle and become a home inspector. And honestly, in Ontario, it's quite easy to start a home inspection business because there's no regulation. So you just better hope you're good enough to not get sued into oblivion.
And just like that, we move in to Cherry Home Inspections. So how long ago did you start the company?
It was 2018. Beginning of 2018, I started putting together my business plan, my marketing, trying to have some structure of a business before I actually started doing my business. So I had my logo, I had my inspection software and everything else good to go. I had my website, I built that myself. It's very basic, but it does the job. And then, yeah, I just, like I say, hung out a shingle and started offering home inspections.
So almost anybody who's bought a home knows what a home inspection is. And I feel like it's, you know, pretty straightforward what a home inspection is. But for anybody in our audience, could you go into great detail? So somebody decides that they found a home that they want to purchase. They would call a home inspector to have someone like yourself come in and have a look. But it's not just for people who are buying homes. It's for people who are selling homes, or I imagine you could even provide a home inspection to somebody who just wants to have their home inspected. So walk us through a day in the life. The phone rings, go.
So somebody calls me up saying they need a home inspection. Maybe they're buying a house, maybe they're selling a house. Sometimes people will have me inspect before they sell so that there are no surprises on the buyer's home inspection. Or so that people maybe will be willing to buy it without an inspection. That's not my goal, but that's, you know, the motivation sometimes. So we set up a time and a day for me to come by and do the inspection. If it's for a buyer, we loop in the realtors, of course, because, you know, it's you folks who really have access to the scheduling, and I endeavor to be as stress-free and accommodating as possible, because it's a stressful period when you're buying, and I don't want to add to that. I want to help alleviate that. So after I get some information about the house, I can confirm the inspection. I send out an email. The only thing I need the buyer to do before we start the inspection is they need to accept an inspection agreement. That just sets out all the terms and conditions, because I don't want anybody to hire me until they know full well what they're getting and what to expect. You know, no surprises from my side should be occurring. We show up and do the inspection. My process, first of all, I'll explain this process to the client. So I check out the exterior of the house. I typically look at the roof first, whether it's with a ladder, a camera on a pole. I have a fancy new drone that I've been using when the wind isn't going to take it away from me. So I take a look at the roof. I look in all the nooks and crannies, look for areas of deterioration, areas where water might get in, areas where pests might get in or have gotten in. And I try to see everything that I need to see in order to evaluate for the soundness of the roof. Then I do a ground level walk around, all the same things, looking for areas where moisture can get in, pests can get in, areas that are deteriorated, areas that might be unsafe, like loose railings or an improperly built deck or balcony. I look at virtually everything that I can see. If I can get under it or into it, I will do that as well. I have disposable coveralls that I'll put on as necessary. Once we're done outside, outside I also look at the lot grading. So it's not just the house. Is your property going to drive water to your home? And if it is, what can we do about that? And I can advise in generality on things like that. Then we go into the house. My process there is I do the living area first. The living room, the main floor, second floor, basement, then attic, which sounds like I'm just trying to do a lot more stairs to get my belly smaller, but I do it in the increasing risk of getting filthy. That way, if I do get filthy, I can exit the home without tracking it around all over the place. I've gone into attics where I've gotten absolutely covered in insulation or cobwebs or other sorts of debris. And it's nice to just get out of the house at that point. Well, while I'm going through the house, I am operating windows, I'm operating plumbing fixtures, electrical fixtures, gas fireplaces. I'm making sure everything works as it's intended to work. I also have an infrared camera, plugged in, pardon me. I have an infrared camera, which is an extra set of eyes. It sees heat instead of light, so that can help me get a little bit more insight with regard to the insulation of the home, air infiltration, moisture issues that are unseen. I think I said insulation issues, electrical hots. So I'm looking at all those things that you would want to know about as a home buyer. We go to the basement. I will look at the electrical system, the plumbing system. I will, if I have to infer certain things that can't really be seen, such as the sewage pipe that leaves the house going to the municipal sewer system, I will warn clients that even though I can't see it, these are the things that you might want to look for, maybe get a plumber in at some point in the future. Work through looking at the furnace. Basically, I spend a lot of time in the basement because that's the engine of the house in a sense. Then I work my way up to the attic. I have my own ladder, my nice telescoping ladder, so I don't hit walls with the ladder as I go through. I climb around in there. I'm looking at the condition of the insulation. Is it compressed? Is it a type of insulation that we no longer want to see in homes, like vermiculite, which is not always problematic, but we need to know about that. I'm looking at the ventilation. I'm looking for any sort of evidence of organic growth, mold or mildew, things like that. But I don't I diagnose that stuff, but I will give people a heads up that that's something they might want to look for. And I'm looking at how all of the exhaust fans in the house, if they're going through the attic, if they're venting, going out properly, if they are or are not, we need to address that. If they're insulated, So basically just the full kit and caboodle of the house, anything I can see, I'm going to look at and advise on. Sorry if that was so long.
I feel like it's a great explanation, but still only scratching the surface. I mean, how many home inspections have you and I have done together? It's a very thorough process. Let me ask you this. In your opinion, would you prefer to have your client there with you for the home inspection? And why or why not?
Well, I won't lie and say it's a super easy, quick process. If I'm alone in the house, I can get in and out fairly quickly, and I can just, because I'm not talking to anybody, and clearly I'm a talker. But one of the things I like to do, or one of the things I say about myself, is I not only tell you what might be scary about the house on the purchase, I want people to know more about how homes work. I want them to know how their home works. You know, does it have a boiler? Does it have a furnace? Does it have a heat pump? So I prefer if the client is there, if we have a full 3-hour home inspection slot, that way we can walk and talk. If they have questions about their home, we can look at the thing we're talking about, and I can give them as much explanation as they want to have. And clearly I'm willing to go overboard on that. So yeah, it's definitely better if they're there. They get more bang for their buck. If you're spending anywhere from $400 to $600 or $700 on a home inspection, depending on the different services and the size of the home, why not get more out of it? So that way people get a bit of an education to whatever degree they want to acquire it from me.
I know you're the guy selling the home inspections, so you probably get asked this all the time. Why is it so important to get a home inspection?
I am definitely not the type that say every home and every transaction should have an inspection, but in reality, if you don't have a home inspection and you don't know enough about homes on your own to evaluate it yourself, and you can't absorb a substantial nasty surprise, then that, I say, is why you want to have a home inspection. In 2017, it was similar to what's going on now, and there was not a lot of inspections happening. It was just the market was too hot, the buyers were in a frenzy, and nobody could get home inspections done. In early 2019, I think it was, I inspected a very lovely $1.3 million home in Ancaster. The sellers had bought the house in 2017. They did a really lovely renovation of the living area, new kitchen, new everything. And it was a beautiful home. No one had ever gone in the attic. The buyers didn't get an inspection, they just couldn't. And just at no point did anyone bother to go into the attic. And when I went in there, I could see it was a complicated venting system from the 3 second-floor bathrooms. And for I don't know how long, the main exhaust duct had fallen from the ceiling. And so for several years at least, all of the air from the bathroom, so that the humid air from showers, was all going into the attic, and it had destroyed the roof sheathing. It had destroyed the insulation. Some of the framing was rotting, and there was mold everywhere, and frost and saturated wood. It was a disaster. And my clients, the buyers, they walked away because it was something they weren't interested in dealing with. And the sellers, I felt really bad for them because they were selling the house in good faith. It's just they didn't know it was there. And instead of selling their lovely home for a really good price, they now had a major remediation on their hands. That is, doesn't take much to look up in there and see there's something bad there. But that's a big reason to have an inspection, is somebody's going through and looking at all the nooks and crannies. There are certain things that a buyer may not be too worried about. Galvanized steel plumbing. What's the big deal? It's old plumbing. We'll replace it if it leaks. Well, a surprise there might be your insurance company may not even insure your home. You might get into the house and they say, okay, now you got to replace all that galvanized steel plumbing. And now you don't have anything to negotiate because you own the house. High-tech plumbing is another one. There's a variety of things that you will want to know before you go solid on the house that you may not be able to find out if you don't get an inspection. You might, but you might
not. Last question. You go in, you do the home inspection, you spend your time with the clients, and besides getting one of those fancy cherry home inspection mugs, what does the client get at the end?
They get as thorough an inspection as I can endeavor to provide. And based on my feedback, I do a really good job at that. I've got quite a few really flattering Google reviews. So thank you, clients and realtors I work with. I really appreciate that. But yeah, I give people as much as I can possibly give them and as much as they want to get. I've got a pretty broad variety of knowledge on homes from the mid 1800s to brand new, all different systems, all different materials. So going into any given home, I'm not usually stumped. Occasionally I am, and that's kind of fun. But I give people that broad knowledge, and I'd say I'm a pretty good communicator as well. So I can really help people understand their home. And when somebody understands their home and what they're looking at, they're probably going to be more proactive in maintaining their home. You know, I'm not a car guy, and sometimes I hear something with my car, and ignorance is bliss until it isn't, and it becomes a more expensive issue. So that's why I like to educate people in their homes so that they don't have to be scared of a noise or a thing or whatever. I also tell people that, and you've heard me say this 100 times, they're welcome to contact me with any questions at any time, whether it's tomorrow, next week, 10 years from now. I really mean it. And I do get a lot of clients who contact me long after the inspection, just asking questions about something else. Maybe they're thinking about a renovation and they're wondering what's possible. Maybe they want to know about what a reasonable avenue is. And I'm completely impartial. I may refer to service people. I don't get referral fees. I don't give referral fees. So everything I give my clients information wise is just the information to the best of my knowledge and ability.
And the actual physical report itself, what would you say most people use that for?
So the report, it comes as a PDF, so you can save it to your computer, you can print it out, you can share it with others. That has two main uses. One, it is the written report. Basically, what's in that report is that is what the home inspection product is. That obviously people will use that to inform their purchase, whether they change the offer or they're comfortable to go ahead. That's kind of informing them from what I'm offering. They can also use that as a maintenance guide going forward. I put in all the little nitpicky things that one might point out about the home. I put it all in context. So if an outlet isn't working, that doesn't mean run away from the home, but it means, hey, when you're working on this area of the home, or next time you have an electrician in, pull them over to that and you might get a more economical repair because they're already in the house. So definitely a maintenance guide down the road to inform any future upgrades.
Each week on the show, I pick a theme that I think is relevant to my guest's business. And I feel like this is the perfect segue right into it. The theme for today's episode is being thorough. And I feel like home inspectors, they have to be thorough. That's what you're being paid for, is to come in, to take your time, to do your due diligence, to really, look in every crack and crevice, like you said, put on your mask and get up in the attic and get dirty and find it. But I feel like it can have a practical application to any business owner. The importance of just attention to detail, looking at it again, being thorough. So in your own words, can you tell me why it's so important to be thorough?
Because I don't want to be sued into oblivion. So there's one reason. No, just kidding, of course. I haven't been sued, so let's knock on wood there. Well, in my role, of course, it's the little things that sometimes become big things, or the things that look little but are actually big, or vice versa or whatnot. So it's just important to cross all your T's and dot all your I's. I'm a big fan of doing things right the first time, and sometimes you can't do it until you know all the little details. As an architecture guy, as I said, you can't build a structure until you know how it's going to get put together. You can't put a roof on until you've got walls and whatnot. So it's just so important to ensure that the structure of your business is put together properly, whether it's manpower, whether it's having the proper business supports. when I started, I have not once tried to do my own books or my own accounting because that is not my forte. So that's an element of thoroughness that I farm out because I can't be thorough in that. I'll end up with a stack of papers and a stack of receipts that I can't decipher. So I leave that to them, and I focus on thorough in the areas that I can. I think I'm meandering and maybe not giving you the best answer here, but that's how I apply that concept.
When you're on a home inspection with a client and you're going through and they're asking you all sorts of questions, because again, I've been on a number of home inspections with you. You are very thorough. You think of things that I wouldn't think of, and the client doesn't think of, and I know how much they appreciate it. So maybe we could touch upon some of the things that you find because you've been thorough.
Yeah. So one thing, when people are often impressed at the details I see or the knowledge I have, or inferring how something was put together based on its current condition. And obviously it's because I've seen so many houses over the years. Just like I say, I don't tell my dentist how to do a root canal because I have no idea, and that's what they've trained for years to do. We were in a house the other day, I believe, when I looked up and saw what was the old basement access. There was that rear addition on the house, and they had closed in the old basement staircase with the pieces of the old staircase, the stringers and treads. And you guys were a little surprised that I noticed that, and was able to infer that. And that's what I offer is that wasn't, in my opinion, a very strong way to do the floor. And if nobody ever noticed that, at some point somebody could be injured if the floor broke. It could just damage the flooring because it's a flexing point that'll damage the floor. So that's the sort of thoroughness that I offer, that gives people a bang for their buck when they're hiring me.
I like to think that I'm pretty thorough, especially with everything I'm doing, and especially with the paperwork that we do. But there can come a sense of comfort where you just get so comfortable doing something so much that you might not be as thorough as possible. And I think that, at least in my career and in your career as well, there are severe consequences if we're not thorough. And I feel like it's always better to err on the side of caution. And I think I admire that about you because of your experience in the insurance business. There wasn't you couldn't not be thorough.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way to be thorough for me, and it's true, when you do things by rote so often, it would be easy to ignore things or downplay things, or not downplay, but just to overlook things. That's why I do everything the same way all the time when I can. When the schedule permits that, that's what I do. Or the arrange. Sometimes I have to do the interior first because the homeowners need to get back in their house, or there's other timeline issues. But whenever possible, I do things exactly the same way. And you've been on many home inspections with me. You hear the same thing over and over because I make sure to do it the same way every time so that I don't miss those things, and so that my clients get the information that they deserve to get from me. And that's my best way of preventing that. And then, of course, when I'm done, I sit down and I look over all of my photos again in case there's anything. Sometimes I'll take a photo of something big, and then there's some little nitpicky thing within the frame that I didn't see because I was looking at the important thing. But that's why I take literally hundreds of photos at the inspection so that I can bring that home with me. And then again, I'm thorough looking at all of the pictures, and that way it can all go into the report as well.
A word you've used quite frequently in the interview is infer. So if I could infer something from this interview, I think it would be to make being thorough the way to do things, and to just always be thorough. Would you agree?
Absolutely. It's the best way to provide consistent service, and it really does cover your butt.
I'll let you off the hook for now. So every week on the episode, I ask my guests to give a shout out to a community organization or an initiative or something that they are a part of that is making a difference in our community. And I wanted to ask who you'd like to shout out.
Well, I think anybody who knows me knows it would have to be the Rotary Club of Brantford Sunrise. Brantford has 2 Rotary clubs. There's one on Friday, the original Rotary Club of Brantford, and the spin-off group. We are independent, but we work a lot together. We are the Rotary Club of Brantford Sunrise. We meet every Wednesday at 7:30. We're meeting on Zoom. If anybody wants to join us and see what we're doing, come on out. Yeah, I joined in 2019, and I quickly got really entangled in all of the activities that we do. We're just such a dynamic group. There's about 40 of us, and we work really hard to do things in the community. Right now, we have a trip of the month draw. So every month we draw 3 cash prizes and 1 trip prize. And that raises about $50,000 for our club. And all of that money, because it's a registered lottery, all of that money goes to, by necessity, it goes to community organizations and efforts that are registered charities and within the strict guidelines of the Ontario lottery laws. We have a Ribs to Go activity, or sorry, a Ribs to Go event at the end of April, where it's a drive-through rib event. We did one in the fall, and we're doing another one now. And I'm not sure if we've nailed down yet the recipient of that effort. Last year it raised somewhere between $12,000 and $15,000. I can't remember. And that goes directly to community events. We've got an online auction we're doing. It's live now. If you go to our website, Brantford, what is our website? It is BrantfordRotarySunrise.ca. You go there, you can go through and see our our auction, and that money is going to support the Pediatric Acute Response Clinic of the Brantford Community Health System. So basically, we have a lot of fun raising as much money as we can to go to so many different organizations in Brantford, such as Lansdowne Children's Center, Why Not Youth Center, Stedman House, Food for Kids, the Food Bank. Of course, Rotary International, the main focus has always been eradicating polio around the world. And yeah, that we've been very instrumental in all of that. So it's a lot of fun to be involved in these things. I've always wanted to be in a service club, and finally I got to a point where I had the time and the roots in a community to really, or the ability to lay down the roots in the community. And this was just such a perfect one and a perfect fit.
Talk about being thorough. That was incredible. Thank you so much for sharing all that. Sunrise Rotary is an amazing organization. Rotary worldwide is shaping and helping communities all over the world. And it's amazing what you guys are doing here. So thank you again for sharing all that with our audience. And if anybody wants to check that out, what's the website again?
BrantfordRotarySunrise.ca. You can also reach out to me if you ever want any information. I'm actually the president-elect nominee for 2022-23, so I better be able to speak well on Rotary because I'll be doing it for at least a year.
Absolutely amazing. We have reached the end of our episode, and I want to give you an opportunity to give a shout out to your own company, to Cherry Home Inspections. If people want to follow along, they want to get in touch with you or just be a part of your journey, where do they go? Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, what? Tell me everything.
Yeah, so my website is cherryhomeinspections.ca. I try to post on there, but it's just a great way to get through to me if you need to, and you can see a little bit about me. But I'm pretty active on Facebook and Instagram. Just search Cherry Home Inspections, and you'll see a variety of things on there. Interesting things I find during inspections, little tidbits of knowledge for people that I think is helpful. A lot about my dogs. I've got 2 Bernese mountain dogs that they're just strange little creatures, so they are the inspector dogs. You'll see them on there a lot. And just sometimes random absurd things that come to my mind, that little videos and things, just because I can. I run the company, and nobody can tell me not to do it.
Absolutely awesome. Jason, thank you so much for coming on the show, for answering all my questions, for telling us about your company. And honestly, thank you so much from me and from the clients that you've helped. We very much appreciate your services. You do an incredible job, and it was really great to have you on the show.
Oh, thanks so much. If you'll permit me a moment to pander.
Oh, I love it. There you go. Thank you. We have so many great guests lined up for future episodes. I hope you'll tune in. My name is Joshua Wall. You've been watching Off the Wall, and we'll see you next week.